morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts, School of Dance, Optimizing Dancer Potential webinar series. I'm Jake O, lecturer in dance science, and tonight I'm so excited to have an expert in dance medicine and science with us. I would like to welcome Professor Matthew Wyon to join us from the UK. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Very good, and you?
Yeah, fine. Very good. So before we actually start, I would like to introduce Matt a little bit so that get you and know Matt about his background. So Matt is a researcher and director of studies for doctoral candidates at the University of Wolverhampton. He is a founding member of the National Institute of Dance, Medicine and Science in the UK and was the president of International Association for Dance, Medicine and Science, which we usually refer to IADMS, between 2015 to 17. He has worked with numerous dancers and companies as an applied physiologist and strength and conditioning coach. So one of his research focus is performance enhancement in dance, and he has published over 100 articles in peer-reviewed journals. In addition, he is also my PhD supervisor, and this makes me even more excited to host this webinar. And seems this is the only chance I can take your class. Right. Cool. And tonight, Matt will talk about the development of strength and conditioning in dance and the role it plays in improving dance technique and performance. He will introduce the basic science behind dance conditioning and also training considerations. And furthermore, Matt will share some tips about strength training modalities that assist dancers to optimize their potential and prevent injuries. And during this whole webinar, all of you, or the audience, you are welcome to leave your questions or comments in the chat box anytime. Now over to you, Matt.
Thank you. All right, I'll just quickly share my screen. Hopefully that's the right one, yes. All right, can you see that now?
Nice and clear.
Okay, excellent. So thank you for that welcome, Jake. And it's nice to be back in Hong Kong, so to speak, even though it's virtual, from the last visit when you hosted the IADMS conference, which was a few years ago, which Brenton did a good job at. So what I'm looking at, or we're going to talk about today, is this whole concept of how to enhance performance. And for myself, I see this the whole concept of supplemental training, whether I know you've had a chat from Erin Sanchez, and you're going to have some more within usually the psychological stuff, and we're going to look at the sort of physiological. The whole thing is all of these things are here to support dance training. And so this is one of the things we've got to get the balance right. And it's something to think of from the start. So we're not trying to take over dance training. We're here to support dance training and to help the dancer do their dancing better. And this is and it's a fine line. We have, and we're going to have a chat about this sort of fine line as we go along. Let's just get on the right screen. There we go. So a lot of dance medicine and science is focused on, which I think is quite a negative focus on preventing injuries. And a lot of the early research and from sort of medicine as well as sort of psychology as well is looked on the negative aspects of dancers, whether it's eating disorders or whether it's getting injuries. And I prefer to look at a bit more positive, a sort of positive view, in that if we can enhance the dancer physiologically or psychologically, for me it's physiologically, then hopefully we will have a good impact on injury incidents. So it's turning the table. So let's look at it from a positive perspective rather than from a negative aspect. Dance science in itself has sort of been going for the last 35 years. So in about the first sort of proper dance science papers, there was a few in the early 70s, and it sort of started kicking off in around 1982, 1984, mainly in the States and in Sweden. And And these were exercise or sport scientists who sort of thought, oh, dance looks quite interesting. And the main ones were a group under a guy called Cohen, and also in Sweden it was Schantz and Astrand. And Astrand is what we would call the father of exercise physiology. And so it was really quite exciting that this guy at one of the world's most renowned research institutes started to look at dance. But unfortunately, it was just one paper and they stopped. And they didn't progress, and that was quite disappointing. So it's kicked off again in about the 2000s. And what was nice, in that sort of 15 years, technology improved. So we could actually look at the physical demands of dancing while they're actually dancing, rather than trying to make a guess about what was going on. So what has the research found? And this is a sort of this is a summary of sort of how I see it as. Dancers aren't very strong, and they're not very cardiovascular fit compared with equivalent athletes. And this is whether they're at a vocational dance school like a conservatoire, or if they're professionals. Unlike, well, I'm not going to say unlike sport, dancers though are amazing at what they do. Their technical abilities outshone anything we see in sport. And this is quite an important thing, because they're so good technically. It means that what we call something called the economy of movement, and this refers to how much oxygen or how hard it is to carry out a movement, is actually much better than any we see in sport. And this allows them to do quite hard dancing without having a very big, what I refer to as an engine inside of them to cope with it. And this is one of the reasons why we suddenly see that dancers aren't as strong or as fit as other athletes, because they're very good technically. Dancers also train more hours per week than any version of sports people we can find. So they have a huge amount of hours training. And this again could potentially cause that most dancers have reported that it's fatigue and overwork that causes their injuries. And this could be potentially a link between the two. And the stuff I started looking at is the three forms of dance: dance class, dance rehearsal, and performance. And we found that actually there's a big difference between the physical demands of performance, and that's what they're exposed to during class and rehearsal. So class and rehearsal didn't prepare the dancer physically for the demands of performance. It did technically, but not physically. And so therefore dancers were having to use performance to get fit to perform, which we see the opposite in sport. So if we take the model we see in sport, they get really, really fit at the beginning of a season, and actually as they go through the season, they get less fit. And what we've seen with dancers is they come back off summer holidays, where usually they haven't done that much, really unfit, and they actually get gradually fitter as they come up to performance period. And then they have this rest, and then they lose that fitness. So we have 10 years of fitness data of two ballet companies, and there's no change in their underlying physical abilities because they detrain so much during their summer holidays. From an injury perspective, what we found is dancers have a similar injury incidence as contact sports. Now this is around 4.4 injuries per 1,000 hours of dance activity. So that's the same as like soccer or rugby, where generally there's an opposition who are trying to kill you. And we don't have this in dance. There's no one on stage trying to take you out. Hopefully you're all working together to perform. So it's interesting that we have a similar high injury incidence. And the research that Nick Allen did noted that the injuries were occurring during class and rehearsal more than they were in performance. And again, this is the opposite we see in sport. So in sport, there's been a lot of focus on of reducing injuries during the training environment. And so most of the injuries occur when they're performing, i.e. when the opposition are trying to kill you. And so, but we see this opposite. So in fact, the injuries occurring when the dancers are in the most controlled environment. So we can actually affect what's occurring in a dance class and during rehearsals to a much bigger degree than we can during a performance. And as I said before, dancers feel that their injuries are caused by fatigue and overwork. And again, this is something that can be influenced. So it's not a non-influencing factor. So it's not as though we're saying, oh, it's a genetic thing, or if it's, I can't think of it's going out. Anyway, it's something which we can control. So one of the differences, this is my very weird picture. So dancers down here, technically above anything that we see in sport. Sport, a lot of sport, this is not a very good picture of somebody running, but it just gives the idea, there's not much technique involved here. Most sports, especially Olympic sports, are what I call grunt sports. They're focusing on one specific physiological area. A sprinter has to be able to run fast. A distance runner has to be able to run fast-ish for a long period of time. There's not much technical skill involved. I always use this example that there's a sprinter, a hurdler, and a dancer, and they're going to run 100 meters. So obviously the hurdler has to go over the hurdles, and the dancer is going to dance 100 meters. So the sprinter wins quite easy because they don't have to do anything. They just have to run really, really quickly. The hurdler comes second because that bit of skill that they're involved with, i.e. going over the hurdles, reduces the intensity of what they can achieve, the speed that they can work at. And the dancer takes 4 days because that's part of the choreography. So this is the other really important factor. When we look at dance, we shouldn't just take what we see in sport and try and plonk it on dance, because the goals of performance are totally, totally different. It's not about who can jump highest. It's not about who can lift their leg necessarily the highest. It's about this aesthetic, this artistry, this conveyance of something to an audience. And so we've got to be careful when we say, aha, if we get you stronger, you're going to dance better. We've got to test that to make sure that's true before we just give dancers loads and loads of physical training. So we've got to have a look. So we've got this continuum from technical skill to physical, I wouldn't say the other end is physical fitness, or it's more grunt sport, as I refer to it as. What has other research found? Interestingly, this is one of my earliest students who looked at this. They found that the fitter dancers got less injured. And this was in contemporary dance, and actually in contemporary and ballet. And then they also found that the physically fitter dancers also performed better. Now they did a little dance piece before and after an intervention, and there's a control group who did the same dance piece before and after. And then those dance pieces were marked by some dance experts, like using audition criteria. And they didn't know who was in which group, but all of those who did the physical fitness intervention, scores improved. So they seem to dance better. Interesting as well, we noted that dancers with really low body fat and strength are more likely to get injured and also take longer to recover. So being ultra skinny is not good for you. So this is another interesting area that we've got to be careful on when we compare dancers with sport people. So dancers maintain their body fat levels throughout the year, the same amount. Sports people go up and down. So when they're training and they're not in performance period or their performance season, they're slightly heavier and fatter than they are from when they actually perform. So they strip down for performance. And at that point there, they often get injured because, excuse me, fat provides, body fat, a slightly higher level of body fat provides more resources for the body to repair itself. So actually, we've got to be careful on getting too low levels of body fat. And the best way for women is menstruation. If you're menstruating, you are healthy. If you're not menstruating, you're not healthy. And we've got to be, people say, oh, we want to use BMI and other factors. But actually, one of the problems with BMI is it's not, we often say you shouldn't be below 18.5. But actually, it varies quite considerably. I've had dancers who are menstruating normally and they've had BMIs of 14. So we've got to be careful about one size fits all. And for female dancers especially, menstruation is the best indicator of health that there is. Dancers, this is something which Yannis Koukadakis did, and he did he's one of the guys I've worked with for, I don't know, the last 25 years. He noted that dancers got fitter after a holiday. And this indicates that they were overtrained at the end of their season. This was looking at Birmingham Royal Ballet. And he noted that by the end of the season, they were all overtrained, they were burnt out, and that actually the holiday period, that period of rest, allowed them to recover. Now, this is again really important. This goes back to how dancers perceive them getting injuries because they were tired and overworked. And that's one of the sure signs of burnout. So again, we're not getting enough rest. But then it's working out how do we fit rest into a schedule. We'll look at that in a tick. And vitamin D is the area that I've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. Interested in that because dancers, I always refer to, are vampires. They never go outdoors when it's sunny. They only manage to get outside when the sun is down, or it's very weak. So even if you get out, into the sun early in the morning and in the evening, often it's not strong enough to actually cause vitamin D to be made in our skin. And in the winter, it certainly is not strong enough at all. As one of my colleagues says, you'd have to be outside the whole day naked and still would not be strong enough to cause vitamin D to be generated. But we've noted, though, by giving supplementation, vitamin D supplementation to dancers, they improve their strength, they improve their jump height, and they also reduce the amount of injuries. And this seems to actually occur quite quickly. So we've done a couple of studies on this. One where we gave them 2,000 units of vitamin D a day. And we found the biggest problem with that is getting anyone to remember to take their tablet every day. And then we had a look at giving a whopping great bolus. So we gave some dancers 150,000 units in one go. And we saw an improvement within a week. We saw a 10% increase in muscle strength within 1 week, because it was rectifying a deficit. So vitamin D works within our muscle contraction. And so it was not the fact that they were weak, it was just that the muscles weren't working optimally. So by giving them vitamin D to allow them to work optimally. What we've noted, though, if you go above the normal levels, there's no increase in muscle improvement. So it's not a case of take lots and lots and lots of it and I'll get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's only if you're got insufficient or deficient levels that we see this improvement. One of the slightly good things about vitamin D as well is you can't kill yourself on it. So if you do take too much, you're not going to die. I think there's been only ever one reported death of it, and this person was taking stupid amounts every day. And another colleague spends his whole life, his last 30 years, trying to kill rats using vitamin D. And it's very hard to do. And they've got a higher metabolism than us, so we're pretty safe. So what can we do about all of this? It's about quality, not quantity. As a dancer, you're already doing a lot of exercise. So if we go back again to look at what they often say in sports science literature, and especially for the general population and recreational or even moderately elite athletes, they always like to say 3 sessions a week. And they always mention 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks of 3 sessions a week, you'll see us X amount of improvement. But that doesn't take account though with dancers of what you're already doing. And so the interventions that we looked at was doing it maybe twice a week and only for about 30 minutes. And that was enough to cause physiological adaptation. So they got fitter. And we don't need to have highly specialized stuff. We need some basic circuit training. We introduced dancers to running. Now, this was a big myth, which is quite nice to bop on the head, that running is not bad for dancers. Actually, it's good for dancers. Okay, ballet dancers who've spent their whole life, in duck feet, find this hard, but actually running, by getting them to run in parallel, actually helps improve the imbalance between the internal and external rotators. So actually it's quite beneficial. It's also really beneficial in that it adds a sort of plyometric element to their running, to their movement. This actually helps improve jump height as well. And you need to do less of it to have the same effect. Now, getting a bit technical, running resembles dance more than cycling or rowing or swimming. Swimming should be used as a recovery, nice relaxing sort of thing, and that's it. It doesn't get you fit. Cycling would get you fit, but it's using the wrong local muscles. So you don't use, cycling focuses on your quads and your bum and your glutes, and you don't really want to develop those hugely in dance. So if you look at so running is nice because it's more posterior chain than it is actually quads and glutes. So it's a better mix on your leg muscles than the other activities. Cross trainer is okay, but I like to have a bit of impact. So it's either running or cross trainer I use, and that's it. Strength training is important. We need to get you stronger. Now, again, this myth, if I do strength training, suddenly I'm going to look like a bodybuilder. You don't. And this comes down to making sure the person who's going to give you the strength training knows what they're talking about. Because actually, often the exercises that people do of sort of moderate to high reps with a moderate to high load will enhance muscle mass. So actually what we need to do is the opposite. We need to do heavy amounts of weight with few reps. And that'll get you strong without getting you bulky, because it works on a much more neuromuscular level. So it helps your coordination. But also we don't know how strong a dancer needs to be. This is the important thing. We don't know how fit a dancer needs to be either. We're making guesses at the moment. So at the moment, I don't think we need to be that much fitter, but we'll talk about that in a tick. Also, strength training does not decrease flexibility. That's the other important fact. In fact, it enhances your active range of movement, i.e. your développé height, your warm back-more height, to improve it rather than decrease it, because you've got that strength then to take your leg through that range of motion. Also for girls, you need to do upper body weight training. This is not for dance, actually. This is not for dance. This is for the rest of your life. So one of the problems we've noticed at the moment with bone mineral density studies is that dance, especially in female dancers, because they don't do any upper body stress when they're dancing, their bone mineral density leaves their upper body and heads towards their hips and their lower body and their lower spine for where the impact is occurring. That means that their upper body is really vulnerable now to low osteoporosis later on in life. So by doing a bit of upper body strength training, will actually improve your bone mineral density later on. So this is for when you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. This is going to look after your health at that point. So it's best to do it, but you've got to do it before you're 30. The other important thing is, if you increase your training, you've got to increase your eating. Very important. Rest. Very important. Our body is a reactive mechanism. When we put a load on it, it goes, oh, that was hard, and then needs to work out how to repair itself and to recover so that it can cope with that new stress. So we're never fit enough for what we're about to do. It's only that training puts a new stress on our body, and therefore we adapt to that new stress. And then we need to recover. So at least we should ideally have 2 rest days, or one whole totally rest day and one moderate rest day a week. And not necessarily together. Maybe halfway through a week you have a slightly lower training schedule, and then one day at the weekend you have a total rest day. And you need to sleep. So again, the amount of deep sleep is important. It's in deep sleep that's when we release the hormones that allow our body to repair itself. So if we get our 6 to 8 hours, we should be looking at about an hour of deep sleep. And nowadays, with all of our lovely technology on our wrist, it can tell us how much deep sleep we get. So you should monitor that and make sure you're getting your 6 to 8 hours. So, dancer here, our runner here. We don't want the dancer to end up here. We want the dancer to move ever so slightly. I think we're looking at a 10–15% improvement on what most dancers' physical capabilities are now to where they need to be. So we're not making dancers into something like this. We're just making them slightly stronger, slightly more cardiovascular fit, not hugely. And there we go. Thank you. Any questions? Oh, you've got some questions, didn't you, Jake?
Yeah, of course. I always have questions. Right.
I shall stop sharing my screen. Have to. How do I stop share? There we go. There we go.
Okay. So maybe I'll start the questions from the floor first. Yeah, shall we? Okay. Okay. So let me see. Right. Our first question from Emily. Okay. Were there more research done in the hip hop and other genres beyond contemporary and ballet?
So it's starting. It's really unfortunate at the moment there's such a focus on ballet and contemporary, because actually if we look at the dancing population, they don't really represent the majority of dancers. So I've done one study looking at the physical demands of breaking and hip hop. There's been a couple of studies looking at injuries. Again, interesting, not surprisingly, a big difference in injury zones, because obviously they put more stress through the upper body. And so we're seeing a much more even spread of where the injuries occur than we see in ballet and contemporary. but no, it's underrepresented and more research needs to be done.
Another question from Mr. Indy Ho. Do you think wearable resistance can be applied to promote techniques and overloading for fitness concurrently for better training transfer? Or
so what was that first bit?
The wearable resistance. Can it
What's
be
that?
applied?
What's
I suspect it's a kind of a device that you can just wear it on. That's just like a vest or.
Oh right, so it's like added weight.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, sort of. So one of the problems we have also, we've got to be careful when we add like weights to the body, that especially like never wear ankle weights, never wear wrist weights, because when you move that limb, we can get momentum going. And so if you say you're doing a grand battement with a leg weight, as it comes up, it's all fine. And then as you come to the end of your range of motion, got so much momentum going, you can take it past where you're able to do, and you can cause injury. So yes, the biggest thing is putting that extra stress. I'd like to see dancers being 20% more than their demands of dance, how much the dancers demanding of them, because then that will allow them have that extra capacity to be able to provide the aesthetic.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. And you just as a summary. So if we use wearable resistance, so it may lead to other range or maximum range of motion when we just do it like kick or other explosive or even kind of movement, so that it may reach out at the range that you usually be, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. So if it's on the torso, that should be okay. If it's on the limbs, not so good.
Okay. Right. Oh, and next, well, we have so many questions here. Right. And other questions from India again. Okay, so most athletes need strong glute for performance and injury prevention, and some dancers may clench their butt always. So do you think excessive strengthening on glute or butt clench for activation will impose negative impact, such as restricting natural internal-external rotation?
So most dancers' posterior chain is awful. They're very weak in their posterior chain, and so in fact they need to strengthen it. And it's one of the things is hamstring is usually weak, calves are weak. So if we look at the whole chain all the way up, so it might be that what we've got a case here of, they are engaging one muscle, either glutes, to the detriment of the chain. And so what it might be a case of then is you not need to start engaging, doing exercises which engage their hamstrings, their calves, their lower back, and to strengthen those, it's to match the same strength as the glute.
Okay, so is there any example we can apply?
I would look at doing deadlifting.
Deadlifting?
That's a whole body movement. I would be careful in doing sort of straight leg deadlift, because again, they'll just engage the glute again to the detriment of the hamstrings. So one thing you can do if you're working on that one-to-one, you've got the skill, is you can pre-exhaust the glute before you do some movements. So then that when you do the harder exercise, that means the hamstring will then get engaged and the lower back will start acting rather than the glute during the movement pattern.
Okay, right. Okay, and next question: should dance training be adapted to each dance form?
So this is a big kettle of fish here, because what's a dance? So when we've got to look at what dancers are required to do when they leave. So dance training is that preparation of to become a professional dancer. And so nowadays, ballet dancers don't do ballet. They have to do modern, they have to do jazz, they have to do tap. And so we've got to be, so if we don't expose dancers to the other genres, and we're so genre specific, it might reduce their opportunities to actually become professionals. So this is, and nowadays choreographers do everything weird thing, and so we've got to be very careful. So we've got to improve a dancer's movement vocabulary, but also give them high-level technical skill. I'm very glad I'm not a dance teacher.
Right, I see. Okay, and next question. Wow, there's quite a long list here. Okay, just wondering, do you have any guidance referred to how we balance rest with consistency of load for bones and tendons?
So we've got to, bones and tendons are slow to adapt compared with muscles. And so we've got, so that's why we've got to, and also bones and muscles sort of are optimize their strength up until around 25 years old. So that's when they peak. So after that, it's all downhill, unfortunately. So the more we can stress them carefully during that adolescent period up into that sort of young adulthood, then the better, the stronger they are.
So,
and that's the only way of doing that is putting load through them, and generally it's impact load as well.
So it's quite age dependent, right?
Yes. Okay. If you're 40, you've had it. Now you can still, exercise will help maintain it, but it won't improve it.
Okay, I see. Okay, and next one. Is it possible to incorporate fitness element into Technic class? If so,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
no, I would separate the two. So this is not about dance science. This is about good coaching theory. A class should have a specific focus. If you're trying to get fitness and technique, neither is going to be done optimally. It's better to focus technique class on technique and have a really good focused class, and then you can have another dance class, but the focus would be on fitness training, not on technique. Also, as soon as you're focusing on technique, the intensity decreases of the class to be able to actually do the technique and to learn it. And so to get a fitness effect, you'd have to reduce the technical level to allow the body to be stressed more to have a physiological effect.
Okay, next questions. This is also one of my questions in my bank. So what is your view of Pilates and Geotonic on improving dancers' strength and conditioning? So especially those equipment are developed from dancer.
So this is interesting. So I've got a PhD student at the moment looking at this area. Pilates came out of Swedish gymnastics and German gymnastics movement. So it's nothing special. We don't know enough about it. The research that's been done on dancers, on Pilates and dancers, there's not much on gyrotonics, has shown the benefits are pretty minimal. Because there's two. One is very, very good at reactivating muscles. So we use it at Birmingham Royal Ballet as when a muscle's been switched off or is underperforming, a bit like that mention of the glutes and the hamstrings and that posterior chain. We'd use Pilates as a method to re-engage the hamstrings and to take that force on the glute away from overriding the hamstrings. But as soon as they've done that, we'd get them onto doing other exercises which put more force through the body. The other problem is Pilates and gyrotonics, often the movements are focused as slow and controlled movements. And that engages our slow twitch fibers, which is wonderful and if you're not dancing. So dancing needs your fast and your slow twitch fibers. And one of the issues we start to see, especially during performance, is there's a greater engagement of our fast twitch fibers, which haven't been then utilized at that speed. And therefore, Pilates hasn't prepared the body for that. So everything has its place. It's when it's being used. So we use Pilates and Geotonics for reconditioning dancers. And as soon as they're healthy, we take them off that and get them onto some proper training. Oh, no, I'll say different training rather than proper training. There you go.
All right. So I would say using Pilates or Geotonics for reconditioning or even for general population is
and re-education. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Right. And next question related to kind of monitoring stuff. Right. To monitor athlete well-being in other sports like football, cricket, so they commonly use electronic questionnaires for sleep, stress, injuries, etc. So is it commonplace in dance or something that is being investigated? So one of the problems, like a number or like a scale.
Yeah. So one of the problems of that is the cost. Sports clubs have more money because they have sponsorship, and so they do it. So in the UK, our big dance companies all do this. So the ballet companies, Royal Ballet, Birmingham Royal Ballet, English National Ballet use a system. I think Scottish are about to join it, where it's all on their phone. They put stuff in every day. It monitors. They can upload stuff, but that costs a lot of money. And so the problem within this is how do we make it at the moment it's not affordable for the dance world because they haven't got that same amount of disposable cash. We're trying to look at ways of one of these big dance companies making it affordable for the rest of the smaller companies as a sort of I would say their charity work or their outreach to the wider dance community to help them be able to make use of these facilities. It'd be good if it was, but again, these things are only good if the dancers are conscientious about inputting this information. Otherwise, it's a waste of money.
Right. And next one. Okay, so this one is interesting. Okay, so are big compound lifts relevant in dances? Should dancers be deadlifting and squatting, or more specific to the movement of dance?
Yes, they should be. Deadlifting, I would do front squats rather than back squats because that will keep, especially mainly for ballet dancers, the front squat's better because it keeps your torso more upright, and so therefore the engagement of the body represents a plie much more than doing a back squat where there's more of a hinge that comes in. So yes, so look at the movement patterns in dance first, and then you look at how you replicate them again within a weights environment.
So just as I remember that what you said, so including strength training with heavy load and less rep. So it would be beneficial to dancers. Okay.
Yeah, they don't need to, but no, that's all. What I would say, the bodybuilding things, bicep curls and stuff, that's only beneficial if there's an imbalance. Otherwise, compound exercises, movements all the way.
Yeah, not a single joint or small muscles strengthening.
Only, again, you only use those in preparation. So again, rotator cuff for boys before they do lifting to make sure they've got the strength in there. So you use those in their foundation training to overcome any muscular imbalances before they move on to the proper compound training.
That's it. Great. Okay, next one. What advice would you give to a recent dance science graduate on getting involved in the field?
So I started this, trying to work it out, over 30 years ago now. And it's as with anything, you volunteer, you do everything, you do it, and eventually you'll get a job. And it might be not your main job. So my main job, I've never been a full-time strength and conditioning coach for a company. I've always done other jobs, and in my spare time or part-time, I have worked with dancers. There's not the money there to potentially live on it. So again, best one in the world as I'm doing now. I teach, I do research, but I also work with dancers to do their strength and conditioning, but it's funded by my teaching and my research.
Right. And the next questions are related to something about assessment testing. Okay, so if talking about fitness assessment for dancer, what is the best option? Like 3 kilometers running, 3 minutes step tests, and recently,
go on.
Tests. Yeah.
So this is something which we're looking at the moment. Actually, I'm about to go down very soon down to Birmingham Royal Ballet, where we're starting to fitness test. So English National Ballet were one of the first companies to do this, and we used to screen their dancers twice a year. And step test, bit waste of time. It's more like finger in the air, looking at them. You get just as much an indicator as the step test. Ideally, if you've got the equipment, I would use a treadmill test with a VO2 max test properly. If you haven't got that, there's some amazing tests developed called the dance aerobic fitness test, and there's a ballet version and there's a high intensity version. This is dance movement. So the original one is more contemporary focused, and this one, and then the ballet is obviously ballet focused. We're just about to do that now with Birmingham Royal Ballet, doing the ballet version of the DARF test. And that's a 20-minute progressive test, which will monitor their abilities to cope. Level 3 is the same as a dance class. Level 5 is the same demands as performance. Okay. Other tests looking at jump height, looking at upper body and muscular endurance. I would also look at body fat. I look at body fat to make sure they're not getting too skinny. So I've rarely seen a fat dancer. I've seen dancers who are getting too skinny, mainly when their rehearsal and their training increases and they have forgotten to increase their eating. And so we intervene then to try and get them back to a healthy level.
So just on top of this question, this is my own question here. So do you think that from the existing testing items around sports science or in other fields, so is a kind of submaximal tests for prediction, is that accurate enough to take part in dancing?
So what do you want the test for? What are you testing? Why are you testing that person?
To assess their fitness level, or get a better understanding of what she is or he is.
Okay, I would always do a max test. It doesn't take long, and then you get more information. The other interesting thing is, because of the high skill level dancers always are working at, they rarely know what their maximal ability is. So often I found is that dancers think they've reached their maximum way before they actually have. And they've got this capacity they've never exploited because they've always been dancing. And so that's why I try and do a max test and say, look, you can actually work this hard. You're used to working down here, but actually you've got this whole capacity up here, which you never engage. And so this is the interesting thing. If we can get them used to that, then that means their dancing actually can improve.
Okay, got it. Okay, and next question. Okay, so what would be some safe and effective ways to improve flexibility and mobility for dancers?
So, so stretching occurs in two sort of areas. We do the stretching to prepare the body for what we're about to do. Then when it comes to stretch training, that has to be done as a training session outside afterwards. And there's some quite good information that often we force stretches too much. And so we should look at holding a stretch with an intensity of about 5 to 6 out of 10, rather than 8 out of 10. And so, but for dancers, I found most of the problem is less on the passive range of motion. It's much more on how to develop that active range of motion, i.e. the strength to take that limb through the range of motion that they actually can do anyway. So actually it's strength training and flexibility training should be done together to enhance that ability.
As a supplementary training in the same section, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And okay, so we have not much time left, so maybe we answer 2 more questions from the floor. Okay, and the next question: what is the current level of integration of S&C in the dance world, or is it still relatively new? So yeah.
So if we remove Pilates, as I don't consider that strength and conditioning, that's much more conditioning and it's much more muscle re-education.
Mm-hmm.
We put it for that sort of thing. Strength and conditioning is very, very new. And we need more dancers who've done then strength and conditioning to come into the profession. At the moment, we've got too many sports people who've done strength and conditioning who come in and they think they don't understand the difference between dance and sport. And they don't understand this difference in what performance is. So they're just saying, oh, most S&C people, I'm not being, no, hopefully too rude to too many out there, more is better. I can lift even more. That must be better. Not necessarily. So the time it takes you to improve, lifting or doing a squat from 100 kilos to 140 kilos, do we see that improvement in dance performance? And this comes down to it. We need to have come back down to, does it improve their dance? So what if they're really, really strong? Unless they're dancing better, there's been no benefit of that extra time spent getting them that extra strength. So it's getting it, that's the thing that we've got at the moment. Strength and conditioning is needed, but we don't know how strong or how fit dancers need to be to optimize their dance performance. Because that's the goal. That's the thing we're focusing on. How do we make them better dancers? Not how do we get them really, really strong?
So actually, this is one of my topics in my PhD studies that I'm
Yes.
going to do with Matt. Yeah. Okay, and last question. Is cooling down associated to the injury in dance? So what are some effective ways of cooling down for dancers?
Cooling down is just as important as warming up. I like the word warm down rather than cool down because you need to exercise during it. So if you're at a training or in a dance company or in a conservatoire, you have maybe a couple of mini warm downs a day after a class if you've got before lunch or if you've got a bigger break. And then at the end of the day, you should then look at cooling or warming down properly, which will then be some exercise. Because you need to do a little gentle exercise, and that helps get blood through the muscles that you've worked to clear out all the sort of the byproducts of exercise. And then you can start stretching and remobilizing. And then that's when you hold your stretches for a longer period of time at the end of the day, not at the beginning of the day. And also you eat, right? As soon as dance class is finished or dance is finished for today, you eat. Then you start warming down.
Okay, got it. Right. We still have so many questions here, but actually we would like Matt to come back again soon to answer all.
Always.
Or we could even, do you mind if I give them your email address so that they can contact you right away?
Yeah, that's fine as well. Always happy to answer a question or 3.
Okay, cool. So let me see. Okay, we're cooling down now, actually. Right, and just for your information, actually we are developing strength and conditioning practice and try to provide better dancers, better support to our dancers in APA here. So in the coming future, we will also work closely with Matt on strength and conditioning research. Right, and thanks again for Matt for your informative and interesting sharing in this great topic tonight. Okay, and just a heads up for you. So on 6th of July, we also have another webinar with Dr. Jatin Abhiganga from the George Mason University to talk about his research and experience in dance strength conditioning. So please stay tuned and we will see you again very soon. Have a good night.